All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coral Living. Happy Canada Day to anyone from Canada who's watching this. I don't know how many other people from other countries are watching this. Happy Canada Day.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the latest spokesman for Pepsi sitting here sporting his cool retro
Generation X.
his cool retro Pepsi shirt. I like it. It looks cool.
Got it from the bargain bin.
And I'm sporting my old school shirt here tonight for Nintendo. Blast past.
Yep.
But yeah, Canada Day. We didn't do too much. Kept it kind of low key. We went to the family's house. Went to my brother's house. Met my dad, mom.
Got into some intense conversations.
Talked
You know
about-
how it is.
Talked about lots of things, and I decided for tonight. I had something completely different planned for tonight, but because our episode fell on Canada Day, and there's been so much controversy in Canada about the schools with the Indigenous children and all the burial grounds that they've been digging up. And finding these kids from the past, that conversation kind of came up.
Elaborate a little bit more than that.
So, well, the in Canada back in the 60s, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, they had those Indigenous schools, and the Anglo-Saxons, I don't know, or the French, or just Canadians as a whole, the colonialists, we were trying to
Colonials.
trying to get the Indigenous children to be more like us and get rid of their traditions.
Don't say us, for God's sake.
Whatever. I don't. What do you mean? Like who?
Okay, anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess the government worked with the Catholic Church in a lot of situations, and children were pulled from homes, and they were put into terrible situations in these Indigenous schools, and many of the kids died and were buried on site, and now there's people going around digging up the kids, and so a lot of people, there was kind of some controversy on whether or not we should even celebrate Canada Day today.
A lot of people aren't shooting off fireworks.
Yeah, and there's everyone seems to have their own little opinion about it. But the part of this story that I wanted to grab hold of is the empathy aspect of it, because what I've seen on social media and news is that there seems to be an empathetic bone being portrayed. People are going out and creating like little sanctuary sites where they're bringing children's toys and shoes and putting them out to say, hey, we see what happened and we agree that this was a terrible thing.
Burning churches down.
That is not good.
But that's one of the things people are doing.
Yeah, that's one of the things doing, and that's that would be not a good thing. We've heard lots of, just in our family venue, some people are saying that digging up all these graves, is possibly a distraction because it's taking away from fixing the things that we should be fixing with the Indigenous tribes now in Canada. And it's putting a light on something deep in the past, and we should be fixing the problems now and not worrying about that. Or maybe that's a little harsh. Maybe I don't think that was exactly what that person was going with. Other people would say, like, well, what are we going to do now? Are we just going to throw a chunk of money at the problem? That's not going to heal the wounds of these people.
We can't even think of the right word for the schools. What is it? Reformation schools?
No.
There's a name for the schools that they put those Indigenous kids in, and how pathetic is it? We can't even think of a damn name.
I thought I said it when we started.
It's good that you're talking about it, but we can't even label it correctly, which means that there's probably a lot of people out there that are ignorant to how bad everything was, which is something. It's something that there's a lot of people out there that were, for whatever reason, unaware of the atrocities
Yeah.
And I mean, for God's sake, we're talking about it. We can't even remember what it's Reformation. What's
It's
it?
not
What are they called?
It wasn't Reformation.
I can't remember what the name of it is. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
It was a bad situation, and people are trying to make amends. I don't know how they make amends of that now, but I do like the empathy. I like this idea of us coming together to support these people and stand beside them and say that, like, hey, we see what happened. That's awful. We wouldn't want that to happen to us, and we're with you. I can't remember a time in my life where other cultures were coming out maybe as much to say, hey, we stand by you. If my memory serves me correct, in my past, when I see conflict with Indigenous tribes in Canada and stuff, it seems like it seems like in the past there was a deeper separation. Like, oh, why can't they just accept things the way they are? Or like it seems like the attitude has changed.
Yes.
And I think that is a step in the right direction, and I want to go deeper with that. Not just with Canada, but all over the place, where we are seeing that all around the world. Do you think that, like, across the planet right now, do you think maybe there is a rise in conscious empathy, like an understanding, whether for any social justice group that's going on? It seems like all over the place. You see it in the States with whether it's Black Lives Matter stuff or different sexual orientations, or in countries where they don't have as many freedoms. They're fighting for their freedoms in, like, Colombia and, like, Tokyo and Russia. It seems like there's this...
Do I think that there's growing empathy?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that growing empathy is a result of luxury. I think luxury plays a huge part here. If your own needs aren't met,
that's a good point.
You ain't got no times for no empathy. You're looking out for you and only you. But in a world where everybody's needs are met, your heart has a chance to actually open up, and you have an opportunity to look at other people's plights, and there's time for you to ponder other people's sorrows and stuff like that. I do think that is the case. I don't believe that,
So as the higher the standard of living is getting worldwide, empathy can grow with that?
I think that there's more room for it. I think that there's... now, there's different forms of that, right? There's a very petty and shallow version of that, where you're virtue signaling and you're portraying that you care. Yeah. But I do think that given the chance if you've got everything you need, I think there is room in a lot of people for their hearts to be broken a little bit, especially depending on how it's depicted and how well it's articulated from people who are suffering. If people can explain to you their situation in an effective way, and you actually have time and room and to do something about it, I think that the opportunity rises that you actually would do something about it, that you actually would care. I think that's a result of like I said, being in a position to actually do that, where you're not so fixated on your own needs. You're not poverty stricken. You're not so consumed with how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to deal with me? And if somebody can effectively show you that, hey man, if you've got everything you need, how about these other people that are starving to death? You've got feelings, right? It's literally the story of the Buddha. He was a prince, right?
Yeah.
What was his actual name?
I don't know.
I don't know what his name was.
I don't remember.
But he was like a prince, and he was sheltered and he went out on a ride with his father one day, and he came across a starving man, a poor man, and a disease-afflicted man. And he was like, what are these? What is this? What are these things? I don't know. I've been given everything I ever needed. And the coach driver of his horse and buggy or whatever explained to him, like, that's death, that's starvation, that's disease. And it drove him, it's the whole lore, and I'm butchering it, but this is the whole lore of what drove the Buddha to seek, like, answers to these questions. And there's room for compassion to grow in the heart when you see these things, like, maybe.
And you're not fighting so hard for your survival needs.
How the hell can you help somebody else if you're in squalor? How it doesn't make any sense that you would have an eyeball for anybody that was suffering if you're suffering yourself. There's no room in your psyche for that. So yes, I do think that the compassion is growing and empathy is growing for these type of things, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. I think people get tired, though, of listening to a lot of the politicians of today and their social panderings towards certain needs while they crush other people underneath their feet. I think that there seems to be a bit of resistance going on towards that, because while it seems like one political party these days can see me and be like, we're going to do this for this type of people, well, who are you squashing? Well, you go meet that need. And people, they really want a more intelligent way nowadays to help people through innovation and coming up with, like, smart ideas that doesn't cripple one side of society while it makes itself look really good to help out another side of society. But collectively, it would appear that as we are getting better, a better standard of living, probably mostly in first world countries and stuff like that, there seems to be a growing outcry to help the less fortunate. It seems like a lot of the really far right-wing conservative types get bothered by, helping other people in other countries, saying, like, help our country first, before you go out there, and we got enough problems here. And I'm not sure where the balance needs to be had there.
I don't know, because the only thing I can think of is, like, stereotypes. Like, when I stereotypically think of maybe a conservative that's like, damn it, like, what about us first? I think of somebody that is working hard, has worked hard and bootstrapped himself into a position and expects the same for others. Typically, I could be wrong. And when I think of a bleeding heart person, I think of a granola eating person that maybe is on welfare or it has extracted themselves from the system or culture to the point where, like, me and my granola eating wife, like, we both have dreadlocks and we both, like, grow our own farm fresh foods, and why can't we just all share, man? Versus a guy that's like, I married Miss America. You know what she needs? She needs a Lamborghini. And I gotta put my kids in the best school. And if I could do it, you can do it too. You know what I mean? I get this weird dichotomy of people. And who knows why people polarize and go to those different places. But when I think of somebody that has no room in their heart for somebody else or the plight of somebody else, whether it be, like you mentioned, like, Black Lives Matter or gay rights or accepting, making room for all religions to flourish within this country, I think of somebody who is very protective of what they've built in their life and is hanging on very tightly. And how is a person like that supposed to understand somebody that lives an alternative lifestyle? Somebody that doesn't value necessarily having the best truck and the best house and competing with your neighbors and all these things. Like, how are they supposed to see eye to eye? And I mean, regardless, what we're talking about is, do we think that compassion and empathy is rising? I do. And I think in the midst of that, there's also this tricky issue of people that are starting to walk away from materialism and walking away from egoic-driven lifestyle, like deeply selfish, egoic-driven lifestyle choices. That's the best I can. I'm gonna wrap my rant up.
No, I agree. I feel like right now we are probably in the heart of seeing materialism like peaking in the West. There's this need to just keep getting, while others like around them are falling apart.
Well, there's a fear. There's also a fear of cultural loss on like all fronts. Like everybody who's traditionalistic, if that's even a word, but everybody that's very tradition based, there's also a growing fear of, I don't want to lose my tradition. Like this is like I find some grounding in being traditional according to like my whatever past I came from, and I don't want to lose that in the melting pot. In the melting pot that is culture, I don't want to let go of where I came from. I think that's an aspect,
and that's understandable. Like I don't think we should be ripping people away from their culture. I think you should be able to hold your cultures as long as you're not hurting others.
But then some people get offended by culture mixing, like cultural appropriation. Like there's an insensitivity sometimes where like, hey man, I thought your whole kind demonized my culture, and now you're wearing our attire. Now you're appropriating some of the things because it's exotic to you. That's maybe not so cool because we've got like a plight on our hands. We've been going through some things, and now you're just gonna like take that like everything else you've taken. There's an aspect. That's probably more coming from people that have historically been oppressed.
Yeah.
But
well, it's whether it's in a country or whether it's in the world, that might be an inevitability because the planet is becoming smaller by the day. There's less and less room. Everyone's getting tighter and tighter and closer together. And when you have two different cultures and people fall in love with each other from each culture, it starts to blend. So, I would say that I think that the world is. I'm optimistic. I understand some people, they're more pessimistic. They see the dark side. I don't. Maybe I just choose to see the bright side, but I see us as becoming more empathetic as we evolve as human beings. And I will segue into my spiritual scripture-y stuff that I talk about and bring that to the forefront because I think it fits well with what we're talking about. I was looking at something called the Law of One, which is a 5-book series that was created by these 3 channelers in the 1980s who studied UFOs, but more specifically, not UFOs, aliens. They wanted to study the psychology of aliens and what they would be like.
The psychology of aliens?
Yeah, like what they would be, their philosophies, what they would be like. And they were channelers, the way people channel spirits or whatever. and apparently in the 80s, one of these channelers.
Oh, I'm going to cut you off right there.
Okay, yeah.
They were definitely channeling demons. And don't even watch the rest of this video. They were channeling demons. Shut it down. No. I'm just kidding. No.
Well, the person that they channeled, their name was Ra. But anyway, who is apparently a being in the universe, who is of like, basically, they channeled this being who was like a collective being, who was many beings in one, who had...
Hey man, what was that guy that Jesus drove all the demons out of? He called himself Legion, did he not?
Yes. Yeah. Also, in the beginning of the Bible, it said, "Let us create man in our own image."
Just kidding. Everybody chill out.
But anyway, so they channeled this being called Ra, who is like a collective mind, and basically they wrote down everything that Ra said through this person. They had like a scribe and a person to ask the person questions, and apparently they had to ask questions in a particular way because Ra couldn't interfere with free will or something like that. And they even asked him, "Are you the Ra from like old Egypt?" And he was like, "Yeah, we came and visited you before."
Really?
Yeah.
This is like a religion, or?
I don't know if it's I don't know what to call it. But it's very fascinating. I actually just started reading like the tippy tip of one of the books, and I was like, I gotta read these. They sound cool. But anyway, they asked Ra a bunch of questions about the universe and stuff like that, and apparently it follows a very pantheism?
Pantheistic.
Yeah, very pantheistic. Like it's all one. Like everything is one. We will all merge back into one infinitely and rinse and repeat. And there's like a karmic nature to things, and consciousness in the universe is like separated into states. Like there's like 7 states before you merge back with the one. What was I calling it again? I had the name and now I've lost it.
The law of one.
Density beings.
Right.
So humans would be considered like a third density being of consciousness. Animals and lesser life forms that aren't aware of themselves would be like second consciousness, and then there's the fourth density beings, which apparently like. You'll notice, like, if you study any type of Eastern system and chakras and all that jazz, there's seven chakras, 7 densities of being.
Numerology plays a giant part.
And so, when humanity, apparently in 2012, humanity advanced from a 3rd density being into a 4th density being, which means...
2012. Why 2012?
I have no idea. I'd have to study more.
Was there anybody anticipating this?
I don't know again.
Trick question. Yes, there was.
Okay.
There was Terence McKenna anticipating that in 2012 something would happen, and the Mayan calendar, remember?
Yes, and they make reference to that in this thing, I think. Yeah. So that is supposed to be an advancement in human... the human spirit, where we move into a more selfless way of being, and that brings us full circle around to the point about the whole empathy thing. Are we growing empathetically as a planet? Are we loving the planet more? Are we loving everything more? The animals, the environment, the people, which is very fascinating. If you feel like it's pretty interesting. And then apparently at like 5th or 6th density of these beings, they start to collectivize into like bigger unit. Like many come into one and create like a force on its own. It's and like a hive mind. And then after 6, you go to 7th, and then you transcend. You merge with the one. And I could be butchering that. You have to go do your own studying. Now, if you're interested, there's a guy on YouTube called Aaron Abke. He's a very popular spiritual guru guy. And he does a lot of really good talks on the Law of One. He's got like a whole series on it.
Can I say
It's
something
fascinating.
about collectivization?
Yeah.
So, to me, I think it's interesting because we already have examples of hive minds that exist in nature. I think bees and ants kind of operate within a hive mind. This is going to be like my crazy long-haired hippie rant that I've stated before, that I think that it's possible that the salvation of humanity might depend on us eventually becoming hive mind like be freaked out if you want. I think it's thousands of years into the future. I don't think there's any chance.
That's like nails on a chalkboard for some people.
Yeah, but I do think that a possible salvation for humanity is hive mindness. I mean, Elon Musk is working on Neuralink, and I think it's the inception of the idea of hive mind thinking. Yep. But also, it's funny that the collective unconscious seems to depict the idea of hive mindness as horrifying, like as shown in like something that's pretty advanced, like take Star Trek. You know, like it's very Jules Vernean in the sense that they'll be like, one day there'll be like an intergalactic federation and all this stuff, and people will be more socialistic and stuff like that. But the biggest enemy, like a no-no to think about, is a collective, like the Borg.
The Borg.
They're the most terrifying enemy in the galaxy. Anything but being a hive mind. No, we need to be individuals. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And the idea that there's actually a belief system out there that thinks that like that's kind of where we're headed into this.
But I would also like to note that in the law of one, there is also a big balance to be had between being both, being hive mind and individualistic, both at the same time. So yeah, you can check out Law of One. I've been dipping into it a little bit, probably for the last 2 years. I'll just take a little piece there. It does have a very religious-y type of, very fantastical. Like, I cannot prove...
It's all fantastical. At the end of the day, I'm sorry, but I gotta set this record straight here. It's all fantastical. I mean, like, you try proving any of this stuff.
Exactly.
You ain't gonna be able to do it.
Exactly. But it's fun to think about.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's... pretty much wraps it up for tonight's episode. I want to thank you for watching the episode. Remember, we start every Thursday at 8:30. We bring it in with a meditation that you guys know I'm big on, and then we start the show up. I post this stuff on YouTube, so you can check us out there if you want. And I guess we'll see you next week.
No, stay spiritual.